what do you take away from the law?
Well, again, you have these iconic images, partially through art, of Moses with the commandments.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, even Holocaust art with the brokenness of those commandments. Buber believing that the commandments are simply addressed to the person, but of course he's really in a sense wrong about that. They're addressed to the community.
Oh, absolutely.
But then taken over time as the address. Again, when we freeze these things and we apply them over time, we take them out of their own motion. So when I see Moses in my mind with the tablets, holding them up, coming down the mountain, I don't think I'm bound by the law. I think that was an expression of the covenant at that moment.
Mm-hmm. There was nothing like that for the Israelites up until that point. I mean, they'd been under Egyptian rule.
Right.
If we're taking everything kind of literally from the Exodus narrative, so there's a sense that almost God has to give them direction. God has to give them a set of rules so that they have something to live by, because they've been in an oppressed state. Mm-hmm. It didn't matter what they did on their own, because Egyptians were gonna, or whoever, maybe in the authoritative position over them, dominating position over them, they didn't need a law. Now they're on their own. Who knows how many numbers? Historians have said possibly anywhere from 500,000 to 2 million, and I mean, there's just no way to know. But if we take it in that light, that they need this direction, is the law then good? Or is it more, and good being that God is doing it because he loves his people and giving them direction? Or, no, it's simply a necessity. It has to be.
I think of the law, or the teachings, or the structure as boundaries. And I think of it more as the boundaries of justice and injustice. And not to freeze it in its particulars. But then to say, what boundaries do we need? But also not to get stuck in boundaries that were either created then or created since and seen as God-given. I think to get stuck in the law is as bad as decrying it. And we have this whole thing now. Again, this is also iconic now of the law and love, and it's so hard to get out of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And Christian idea of love is, to me, law with a capital giant L. We could do a thing, with love, but then law. I don't know what it is. I mean, some of the most judgmental people in history are Christians. So I think that always has to be disciplined, because it becomes a power unto itself. So what the law was then meant for be, what really happened, these are different questions. But my own sense is we are constantly trying to understand what boundaries are needed in our time, and what boundaries need to be violated.
Would you say any of the boundaries of the Ten Commandments today could be violated?
Of course, how they're interpreted and all. And, what do these concepts mean then and now? And, thou shalt not murder. Okay. So, what does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
Well, thou shalt not take life. Okay. What does that mean? We have, in the United States, where we brag, and Christians, so sometimes Jews do too, about our military might.
Mm-hmm.
And we have chaplains, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're all over the place. And I even gave a lecture on the Holocaust at Fort Hood, which I proudly display in the center to make sure everyone knows I'm a real Texan. But, what is that about?
Mm.
So I think we have to come to grips with the fact that we want to hear the prophetic, and we don't want to embody it.
Mm.
Because otherwise, why would one go to church, hear about this Jewish prophet or Jewish Messiah who seems to have no truck with weapons and refuses to protect himself in the story,
Mm-hmm.
and then raise the American flag and celebrate our power? Now, this is a contradiction that Christians don't rarely face. And of course, there are Christians who do. I'm going to a class. It's also a community class, which was reading my first book a year at the Catholic Worker, and I knew Dorothy Day. I lived in the same building that she did for a year. She was a pacifist. Total.
Mm-hmm.
Complete. She also was essentially a communist. She was anti-capitalist.
Mm-hmm.
Seems to me much closer to Jesus, as I read in the Old Testament, than Christianity has been.
Interesting thought.
Well, I mean, the seminary is built like a fortress. And I've even told some of the professors there that I'm going to have, one day I'd like to wake up and just see it surrounded with tanks. It would really go well. And so, we have this amazing contradiction, but people want to hear this word of this. Jesus seems to be a pacifist. He gives up his life. Now, then some people say, well, he gave it up so we could have ours.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what does that mean? So we could have ours to protect ourselves from others, or so we could have ours to give ourselves to others? And what does that mean? So the religions that grow up around Moses, the law, Jesus, say Christianity, I don't know what connection they have with these stories, except they claim ownership of them.
Sure.
So most religious folks spend their whole life trying to free themselves from the way religion interprets it.